This will be so stupid. Why? Because the following video that you are about to watch contains a lot of sarcasm, irony, mockery, and slaughtering laughter at the expense of dumb, prejudiced, close-minded people whose train of thought is bound to be completely and utterly derailed when they realize that other trains of thoughts exist. However, the railways are absolutely differently shaped. In this video, we will read some stories of hypocrites being called out, thinking that the grass is green on the other side when in fact, it's not even green, it's probably dark, or even worse, maybe some poisonous purple. With that out of the way, let's get started. Do you know anyone who actually left their country to get away from what they saw as wokeness? And if so, how did that turn out? Do tell us your stories. Story number 1. Australian politician Pauline Hanson moved to England because apparently she believed it was less multicultural than Australia. Then moved back not long after because she quickly found out that that was not the truth. And it's worth noting that she's the leader of the anti-immigration party. And it's also worth noting that in the 2017 Australian parliamentary eligibility crisis, one of her party's senators was ruled ineligible because he had dual citizenship with Britain and was born in India that he tried to pretend hadn't happened. Story number 2. My brother tried to move to Poland because of how woke Australia has become. And for reference, we are basically quarter Polish. Our maternal grandparents immigrated here after World War II. He learned the language and paid for the research to get his Polish passport. Then he sold his house, which was in disrepair. At a considerable loss, plucked his teenage child out of school and tried to move over there. I tried to warn him, as much as I'm fond of Poland, the reality is unskilled labor has a hard time there. And my brother is an unskilled person. I tried to tell him that Poland is currently dealing with a huge influx of Ukrainian refugees, and the labor market is tough. He would not listen though, told me to go fuck myself. He lasted 3 weeks. Then he ran out of money, could not find a job, and had to come back. He is now back in Australia and in an exceptionally worse financial position before he left, trying desperately to lean on the family for support. The sad part is that by learning the language, he is still ahead of 90% of the examples in this thread. It's funny because folks just assume because they are Anglo, other countries will hire them over their native folks with similar skills as if construction or whatever isn't a thing already in Poland. And you'll find that all these people think they are special. Story number 3. There was a documentary a couple of years ago, pre-Russia-Ukraine war, in which a French man had left France for Russia because he didn't feel safe, plus wokeness. And he had chosen Russia because it was wider, safer in his opinion, and more culturally Christian. And something about visas being easier to get at that time. I don't remember the specifics. Picture this. He didn't speak a word of Russian. He lived in a gated community with CCTV. It was far away from the capital, big cities, which, according to him, is what he wanted. Probably thought it would be like in France. And the documentary was shot during the tail end of winter, which means he was even more isolated. He wasn't there on a qualified worker visa. He worked in trades when he was in France, meaning if you don't speak the local language, it becomes very complicated for you to do your job. During the entirety of the documentary, you could see how isolated he was. No neighbors nearby to talk to, etc. And yeah, he had a big, nice house that he stayed in 24/7 because there was literally nothing else to do there. He also was single and in his late 20s. How was he going to meet people? Still, he was hell-bent on convincing the journalist that he was perfectly content because he may not speak or read Russian. Heh, but at least they're white. Story number 4. Had an uncle that moved to Vietnam when Trump lost. Series of insane Facebook rants and life moved on without a beat when he left, and close family just simply didn't care. He sure didn't either. He got big mad nobody called him and that not one of us wanted to visit. Real creepy psycho kinda guy that raged daily about how America was now doomed that Trump lost. Just unpleasant, never was, is, or will be happy. He was in his early 60s at the time he left on a tourist visa he overextended after 90 days. Burned through whatever savings he had by month number 4 and ended up renting a room from an elderly lady for $4 a day, off the record, as he couldn't stay anywhere that needed his passport information, as it kinda flagged Vietnamese authorities if that were the case. His rants got more and more unhinged, and we all could tell he was starting to go nuts about 8 months in with isolation, as he refused to learn Vietnamese and the smaller city he moved to, so not to be caught by the authorities. Folks didn't at all know English like he thought they should. Real piece of shit. Ended up arrested about a year into his stay in an online sting operation attempting to solicit sex from underage boys, and spent 3.5 years in Vietnamese prison for solicitation of underage sex and possession of child porn. None of us knew for a few days as his posts and messages just stopped. We thought he died or committed suicide. His mom found out after 2 weeks of silence that he was jailed. He was deported to US custody that shipped his ass immediately back stateside. He had to immediately register here as a sex offender, and last I knew lives in a halfway house for offenders in Mississippi and cannot access the internet, which made the group Facebook a hell a lot more tolerable. Had the nerve to call me before Thanksgiving and I just hung up on him when I heard his voice, as I didn't like him before, and after getting busted soliciting sex with minors, I want nothing to do with him now. Nobody in the family that I'm aware of has any contact with him, and rightfully not going to engage him. Story number 5. Yup, my family member here in South Africa plans on moving to the US as an Afrikaner refugee, but she seems to be having second thoughts and asked for a 6-month extension to get her 4-bedroom house rented out. She's also currently on holiday at a fancy wine farm. I'll keep you posted on her harrowing ordeal. By all accounts, the Afrikaner refugees have been pretty disappointed by the US so far. They thought they were going to just be given free houses and good jobs. Spoiler, they weren't, and are upset that they can't afford to have servants. I have a white, not Afrikaner, friend in Cape Town who's really enjoying the Schadenfreude. Furthermore, she's in for a surprise when Trump dumps her in Idaho or Nebraska, with minimal health care, food benefits, and having to work 3 jobs. She's going to wish she was back in South Africa with her 4-bedroom house and going on holidays to fancy wine farms. Story number 6. There is some numpty who's gone to Russia from the US because apparently the US is too woke. I believe he's actually ended up joining their military and fighting against Ukraine. I give you Derek Hoffman. Bonus mention to all the reformers in the UK who say they'll move to Europe if anyone but reform win the next election. They hate immigrants, so if the anti-immigrant party doesn't get in, they'll escape by becoming an immigrant themselves. You couldn't make this shit up. Story number 7. I remember this absolute bellend of a far-right local politician here in Sweden who said something along the lines of, "I'm so sick of Sweden's failed immigration policies. I'm going to take my family to a country where they don't allow immigrants." I like to point out a flaw in your reasoning, good sir. Edit. He actually came back to Sweden and he's involved in politics again after moving to Hungary in 2018. Oh god, I had a colleague like this. She moved to Spain around 2015, and then of course we got Brexit in 2016, and she's all over Facebook ranting about immigrants and how we should get out of the EU from her apartment in Spain. It was unreal. I had to block her in the end. Story number 8. Yes, they're living in the Dordogne and insisting on only watching English TV, talking to other expats, eating imported British food, not learning French, and complaining about all the immigrants in Britain and how they don't assimilate. Ha! By the way, I'm French, and Dordogne is where I live. You have no idea how many British are just like this. We are a tourist region, so listening to someone with a not very good French is current, and it's okay. French is a hard language to learn, even for natives. But the number of English speaking not making any effort, we start seeing a bunch of Americans too, is so disrespectful. Story number 9. A very distant relative of mine moved from Germany to Hungary because he felt like Germany was too woke, too liberal, too vegan, too regulated. The dude never worked a regular job, always doing this or that illegal side hustle while spawning kids with every woman stupid enough to fall for it. Last I heard, he's still doing illegal shit. Also, I'm sure the outstanding arrest warrant in Germany had nothing to do with him leaving. XD. Story number 10. Co-worker didn't leave the country, but he moved to the countryside because the cities are too woke. The straw that broke his back was a new bicycle lane. He just whines about there being nothing to do, and there is no fiber optics either, and he has to chauffeur his family about so much. I just listen to him and nod. What exactly is woke, I once asked, and he said, that new stuff. Okay, sir. Lol. And to that I say, what a snowflake. Crashing out over a bicycle lane is crazy. And God forbid there should be progress. Story number 11. Work colleague left the UK to join the Westboro Baptist Church. Still there as far as I know, married into a family I think, but not 100% sure. Story number 12. LOL, yes! He's now a real estate developer in Dubai. I'm sure he'll fit right in. Oh my, this is my example as well. This is my example as well. He left the US because he didn't want his tax dollars to fund gender-affirming procedures in schools and prisons. He moved to Dubai and is now annoyed he's treated as a fifth-class citizen. Not sure what he was expecting. He immigrated to the US from India. Story number 13. I met a dude from Colorado that moved his family to the UAE because the US had gone too liberal. I couldn't quite wrap my head around the concept of moving to an authoritarian state to escape excessive expression of freedom? Why? Because it's not about individual liberty like they claim. It's about them being in a place where an authoritarian power is enforcing their views on everyone around them. For them, that is freeing them from the stress that they might encounter something uncomfortable. Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. You don't want people to have freedom, so you move somewhere they don't, forgetting that you are being tolerated at best. Story number 14. I'm an international teacher. I had a coworker who left Texas because, among other reasons, she thought they were going to force her to respect trans people. She lasted 2 years and moved back to Texas. Story number 15. Brazilian influencer Monarch moved to the US to escape the communist judiciary dictatorship. He seems very depressed from his blogs, very disappointed in the American dream, and found out everything is designed to take your money. Oh, and he also routinely comes back to use our free healthcare because he can't afford medical treatment in the US. Story number 16. I live in Japan. Started on a student visa a few years ago at a language school in Nagano. There was an American also at the school, maybe 15 years older than me. Ex-military, receiving a ton of medical pension for apparent chronic pain that no one ever saw him express anything about. Apparent chronic pain that no one ever saw him express anything about. Whatever. I don't know what or if he actually went through anything or what he was actually feeling. At the karaoke night, people were getting to know each other, and he told me he came here because he wanted to find a wife who actually acted like a woman and listened to her husband. He makes it known he's a pretty big Trump supporter. I started avoiding him pretty hard. We both left the school eventually. I passed the N2 level of the JLPT, second highest level of the government's Japanese language proficiency test, and I am hired by a company and I acquire a work visa. He never takes the test. I am impressed by how little Japanese he has managed to learn in his years here while railing against immigrants in the US on Facebook. He needs a visa, and since he has money, he opts for a business management visa and opens a bar in town. He gains a reputation as a solicitor of sex from younger women in our smallish community. He's found to have accounts of several sugar daddy websites and apps. I hate that this man is one of the prominent fellow Americans in town. Cut to this year. Japan has its own take on immigrant reform. Things get stricter. One of the changes? If you want that management visa, you now need to have passed at least the N2 level of the JLPT. He's fucked. He closes the shop and he's heading back home. His nice furniture and appliances are all on fire sale. I picked up his 60,000 yen washing machine yesterday for 10,000 along with the nice leather bar stools and a sofa. As we were loading up my truck, he was grumbling about how unfair the changes were. I replied with, well, I guess they feel like if you want to live here, you need to learn the language. I don't think he'll ever make the connection. Thanks for the cheap furniture and a good fucking riddance. Story number 17. I came into contact with one case like that. He and his wife converted to Islam, left for Syria to fight for ISIS. The Kurds attacked the city he lived in one day. The wife managed to cross the Turkish border and came back to Germany, but he was captured and never heard from again. It is assumed that he died in a Kurdish prison. The idiot managed to get his whole family into trouble because all of them were prosecuted for supporting terrorism. They had sent money to Syria via Western Union via Sudan to support him. All because woke Western society with its overabundance of rainbows, mattress-carrying women and trans people seems so degenerated. Story number 18. I am Canadian, and several acquaintances, co-workers, and gym buddies moved to the US because Canada is too woke. Apparently, we're teaching their kids to be trans in schools, which I strongly suspect is actually just teaching their kids that trans people are human. Their Facebook feeds are now entirely posting pictures of them with their kids and their guns, frequently with the kids holding the guns and talking about how they feel safer there, which is insane if you look at crime stats in Toronto versus any city in the US South. It feels like they are trying to sell the rest of us in their choice. Most of them are MLM entrepreneurs. That means scummy people who dislike regulations that might slow their income's steam. But some are software guys who just want more money and think being able to carry a 50 caliber gun in their car is cool. One has already had their kid survive a school shooting and is still sticking to their ideology that the US is safe because Canada has homeless and brown people. Note that some of these guys are brown people. Story number 19. My friend moved to Germany because he said America was fake and he wanted a place where people were more blunt and logical. Now he's mad that nobody does small talk. Customer service is basically non-existent. Offices close early because that's the rule, and people correct him instead of sympathizing. He also keeps complaining that jokes don't land and that everything feels cold. He wanted honesty. He didn't realize honesty comes without reassurance. P.S. He hates fast food there. He'll probably be back in a year. Story number 20. Not the country, but my uncle left his 2 million house in San Francisco that he bought for peanuts in the 70s to move to some shitty Texas town where he regularly gets stopped and mistreated by ICE because we are fucking Puerto Rican. But hey, at least the woke isn't there. Story number 21. A few people, a couple moved to Dubai because of wokeness, but really was for tax reasons, and discovered why so many supercars are dumped at the airport car parks. Husband fiddled some numbers in his business, then tried to flee the country while his wife was out shopping. Two guys I know threw rugby up sticks to Thailand to open a bar with their sponsored girlfriends. They were the whole can't say anything anymore, and women should be in the kitchen, etc. Anyways, I'm not 100% sure what the business and property laws are in Thailand, but everything had to be registered under their girlfriends' names. Inevitably, a year later, they've lost everything and came back to the UK effectively homeless. Oh my, as a Thai, this is a tale as old as time. Westerner sees the grass is greener and comes for the weather and great food, only to realize of government policies towards immigration and small business is a bureaucratic nightmare, and corruption is rife. 51% of a business has to be owned by a Thai national, so they put it in their girlfriend's name. Also, Thailand is great to stay for 3 months while it's freezing in Europe or America. After that, visas are extremely hard to extend.